Yeah, I should have waited for those words.
You got me off track.
Okay. Sorry, let me repeat a few minutes there because it wasn't recorded. Chapter 25 comes right on the heels of Balaam, the story of Balaam. King of Moab, Balak, called him over to curse Israel, who were banked on the northern side of Moab, about to cross the Jordan and take Jericho. But of course, Balaam, strange man that he is, comes and says, I will only tell you what God tells me to tell you. And so 4 times from 4 different locations, Balaam blesses Israel. And the big one there is in chapter 24. Let's not back up any further than that. But chapter 24, key verse down in 17 again. I see him, this is Balaam, in prophecy. He's being asked to curse Israel, but this is what he actually says now. As I said, he's already blessed them 3 times. This is his final one. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star shall come out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel, and batter the brow of Moab, and destroy all the sons of tumult. And Edom shall be a possession. Seir also, his enemies, shall be a possession, while Israel does valiantly. Out of Jacob, one shall have dominion and destroy the remains of the city. In my Bible, in verse 19, 1 is capitalized because they think that is a reference to Christ, and I would tend to agree with them. He is the star that holds the scepter from verse 17. So there is a prophecy of the coming of Christ. He goes on to prophesy about Amalek. Goes on to prophesy about, no, Amalek will be it. But anyways, in a literal sense, that was fulfilled, but not in any one dramatic event, just over time. But primarily, verse 19, out of Jacob one shall have dominion and destroy the remains of the city. I'm not sure exactly how to take that, but once again, I think we're talking in spiritual language here, as opposed to, it's kind of sometimes the physical and the spiritual kind of blend into one, if you know what I mean. Because Israel will physically conquer the land and dominate some of these people over time. But ultimately, what's Israel's job? Bring forth that star and that scepter who's going to conquer all the world. Ultimately, he judges all the world, and of course, capturing the hearts of people to come into his kingdom. But anyways, Balaam blesses Israel, and he doesn't curse them. And Balaam is I got a feeling he was a bitter man. What did King of Moab promise him? I don't remember the wealth, and it doesn't matter. But he said no. God told me not to go. Balaam or Moab, King of Moab, Balak thinks he's negotiating. He sends back more honorable men with a greater prize. And Balaam wants it, but he's also going to speak what God actually tells him to speak. And that's, of course, where he runs into on his donkey, runs into the angel who's about to kill him, and we go into that story. But anyways, God knows his heart, knows his heart isn't right. So when Balaam finally gets done blessing Israel and the king of Moab, what verse is that? Hang on a second. See if I can find it real quick. Yeah, absolutely. You're right on, Russ. Verse 25 in chapter 24, then Balaam rose and departed and returned to his place. Balak also went to his way. After all that, what did Balaam gain from it? Nothing. That's where his dirty heart comes from. Man, he's been all pumped up with thoughts of great wealth and honor coming his way. But after he's done blessing Israel, party's over, and he doesn't have anything to show for it. And since he has a greedy heart, he does not leave. and he ends up causing Israel great trouble. Chapter 25, we learned who is Phinehas. He will be on the test. Anybody remember who Phinehas is? Who's his father? Eliezer. Who's Eliezer's father? Aaron. So this is Aaron's grandson. Israel starts being seduced by the Midianite women. I used to live in Michigan. Border crossers all the time. Canadians, Americans mixing it up all the time because the border's so porous right there. You just go over the bridge and you're in Canada, and they come over the bridge, they're in America. I got a feeling that's kind of the way it was with the Midianites and the Moabites. The Midianites are east of the Moabites. Right now, Israel's north of them, but the Midianites and the Moabites seem to go a little bit together. And once again, where did Midian come from? Ultimately, who is the man Midian's father? I'm going to kill you people if you don't remember that. Ooh, that's me getting tough. When Abraham died, Genesis 25, married Keturah, had 6 children. One of them's Midian. Why do I point that out? Because once again, I commend this congregation because I think you do it better than a lot. And I've seen a few congregations in my day. Teach your children. What are you passing off to your children? Time your children leave your house, now they're responsible for themselves and they may not be faithful. But hopefully you have planted the gospel message deep in them. So the religious tradition continues. Who's Midian's father? Abraham. You know Abraham passed on his religion to Midian. How do we get from Midian the man, from Genesis 25, to Midian the nation, here in Numbers 25? Ritual prostitution. You got prostitutes seducing Israel to engage in illicit activity in the name of worship. What's that?
They didn't teach the children.
Didn't teach the children. That's absolutely it. Didn't teach their children. I'm kind of a big fan of VBS for me. If I'm designing one, putting one together, you know what the theme is? Christian evidences. I want my kids leaving high school with Christian evidences grounded into them. Do you know why? C.S. Lewis said one time, I thought it was really good. Basically we are, as humans, we are intellect, we are emotions, and we are imagination. When you're really tempted to sin, what leaves you? What starts working against you? It's your emotions and it's your imagination. What you got left? You have to know in your core, I know there's a God. I know Christ is his son. I know the Bible's inspired. I know God calls this sin. And I know I'm going to be held accountable for it. And I would also say, particularly you get to college, what's the first thing you run into at college? Skeptics. I still got a friend from college. Anybody ever read the Star magazine? I might have told you about it before. The Star magazine, one of those magazines that's right at the counter.
I've seen it.
Jen-Lo or J-Lo and Jen-Lo. I'm getting old, man. I can't even say J-Lo. J-Lo and Ben Affleck are getting remarried. Those kind of candy magazines. Well, I used to get in line at the grocery store and pick it up, and there's his name on it. He's a big man at that magazine. He's still a big man in New York. And he was raised in a Christian, or wasn't a Church of Christ, but he was raised in a Christian atmosphere, and you can tell that his family members are very strong. He puts the most ungodly things on Facebook. And even though he knows how Christians are going to react to it, he doesn't care. He's like in your face with it. Who would believe in the invisible man? That kind of stuff. Now, as Christians, you want to have intelligent answers for that because they're going to run into that. But most importantly, it is your knowledge, your faith, that has to be rock solid when your emotions turn against you. When you honestly have to say, yeah, I know I'm not supposed to do that, but I want to. Everybody else is doing it. The only thing you've got to lean on at that time is your knowledge, your faith. That has to be rock solid. And that's my opinion. But obviously there's all kinds of good topics for VBS. But when it comes to my children, if I were king, anybody ever play that game? If I were king, making all the rules, we would certainly have our kids well educated in Christian evidences for that reason. Why do you believe in a resurrection? Come on, that's gibberish. Why do you think? Did I tell you this one or not? Minding my own business, I had made a friend at the Gainesville Sun, Gainesville, Florida's newspaper. Made a friend of a reporter there. He and I traveled in the same circles, got to know each other about the same age. He found out I was a preacher, and I could tell he was checking me out when he found out I was a preacher. He didn't say it the first night, but one day, just out of the blue, I was minding my own business, and he said, "You seem like such a reasonable guy." I don't really believe Lot's wife was turned into a pillar of salt, do you? Come on. It's at those moments I think we need to have an intelligent answer. And by the way, yes, I do believe it because the Bible says it is a correct answer. And I don't believe there's anything wrong with it. But you got to know that's not going to satisfy the person that asks it that way. They're looking for something more. It does not appeal to the intellect. And as a Christian, I think we ought to, one of my favorite proverbs, if it's my favorite proverb, I think I'd know chapter and verse, but I don't. The righteous man studies how to answer. Okay, that's a challenging question. I've heard it more than once. People are interested in that question. How do I answer it intelligently?
The righteous man studies.
The righteous man studies how to answer. It's kind of parallel with Peter's words. Sanctify the Lord God in your heart and be ready always to give a defense or an answer for the hope that is in you with meekness and fear. But anyways, since I brought it up, I always start with Isaiah 41. I'll say it real quick because I know we're off topic. But in Isaiah 41, and we won't read the passages because I do know we're off topic. But starting in chapter 41, verse 21, all the way through chapter 48, you know what the theme is in Isaiah chapter 41? He's challenging himself. What was that? Oh, okay. I didn't hear you. If you're a class clown, you got to speak up so I can laugh along with you. He's challenging the idols. And guess what he stakes his claim to? Who can tell the past? And who can tell the future? That's how you know I'm God. He stakes his claim to prophecy. You know why I like prophecy of all miracles? You know why I like prophecy more than any other? Because it's verifiable. Actually, I will give you one example. Look at Isaiah chapter 41 real quick. I don't hesitate to do this because I know we're off topic. Here's what I mean. Isaiah 41, verse 21. Present your case, says the Lord. Now, what's he talking about? Present your case for why idol worship is okay. Why should I allow you to worship idols? Bring forth your reasons, says the King of Jacob. Let them, that's the idols, let them bring forth and show us what will happen. Let them show the former things, what they were, that we may consider them and know the latter end of them, or declare to us things to come. Show the things that are to come hereafter, that we may know that you are gods. Yes, do good or evil, that we may be dismayed and see it together. Indeed, you are nothing, and your work is nothing. He who chooses you is an abomination. Key verse there is 22 leading into 23. God is staking his whole claim to prophecy. One more passage. Look at, give me a second here. Yeah. Look at Genesis 42, Isaiah 42, verse 8. And I'll make my point, we'll go home. I am the Lord, that is my name, and my glory I will not give to another, nor my praise to graven images. Look at this verse. Behold, the former things have come to pass, and new things I declare before they spring forth. I tell you of them. Now, look at the phrase, behold, the former things have come to pass. You know what I wrote down right next to that passage? Genesis 12, 1 through 3. At the time Isaiah is writing, what time is it in a historical sense? On the timeline. 700 BC. Isaiah wrote this down somewhere around 700 BC. When did God speak to Abraham? 1400 years earlier. What do you say to him? Get out of your country, from your kindred, from your father's house, to a land I will show you. I'll bless you. Make your name great. I will bless those who bless you, curse him who curses you, and in you all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. That's what God said to Abraham around 2100 BC, somewhere in between 2100 and 20. Did it come to pass? God spoke to one man, and by the time 1300 years passes, Isaiah writes, the former things came to pass. The nation God said he'd build out of Abraham, here we are. We're in Jerusalem. There's the temple. That's pretty powerful stuff. And new things I declare before they spring forth, I tell you of them. And of course, we're not studying Isaiah, but Isaiah saw the rise of the kingdom in chapter 2. Chapter 7, what's he see? He sees prophesies about a virgin birth. You don't prophesy about a virgin birth. Virgins don't have babies. There it is. 700 years, it'll come true. Isaiah 53, what an amazing chapter that is. In Isaiah 53, the suffering servant, he sees in vision the crucifixion of Jesus, the same way David does in Psalm 22. My God, why have you forsaken me? You ever thought about that? You're standing under the cross watching Jesus suffer, and he says, my God, why have you forsaken me? If you're a faithful Jew, what do you immediately think of? David in Psalm 22. And if you know the psalm well enough, you start thinking of it in your mind, it should dawn on you. That psalm's being fulfilled right before our very eyes. They divided my garments, cast lots for them. The bulls of Bashan have surrounded me. He's describing the cross. Brethren, that's a miracle. It's an absolute miracle. Now, why do I start with that when I'm trying to answer the simple question, why do you believe Lot's wife was turned into a pillar of salt? Because guess what I've already done? I have established that miracles are necessary. Now, I may or may not, depending on who I'm talking to, bring up this subject too. If evolution is true, you do realize this has to be true. At some point in the past, something non-human gave birth to something human. Hey, atheist, did you see it? Can you reproduce it in a lab? Seems to me you're taking it on faith. And may I add, what did Shakespeare say? A rose by any other name? Smell just as foul. Something non-human giving birth to something human. That's a mighty big miracle. Oh, it's not a miracle, that's natural. Come on. I know a miracle when I see one. So what have I done? I've already established that miracles are necessary. If the atheist is right, something non-human... by the way, I love one of the things the late Jackie Steersman said about this subject one day. I never forgot, he said, you realize that if a princess kisses a frog and he turns into a man, we call it a fairy tale. You inject a million years into it, we call it science. That's the magic ingredient. The only way you can get people to believe that slowly over time, something non-human became human. Thomas Warren, in his famous debate with Anthony Flew, he really bored down on that. He used to say either, if memory serves me correctly, it's been a long time, but he said, no matter how old the universe is, if evolution is true, something non-human was either transformed into something human or gave birth to something human. Now, at that point, what have I done? In my eyes, I know the atheist won't believe it, but in my eyes, I've just established that you can't believe in the Genesis chapter 1 version of how man came to be because it's too incredible. But you turn around and believe something non-human gave birth to something human. I'm not sure anybody is able to explain how man got here without a miracle. Even the people who don't believe in miracles use a miracle to explain how we got here. And of course, the odds that all things could have happened the way the atheist thinks they happened. And then one final point. Does God lie? So the fact that Lot's wife was turned into a pillar of salt is that hard to believe? Yeah, it's hard to believe, except it's written in a book that already has miracles I can verify. And I've listened to the world talk about the origin of man and realized that nobody can explain the origin of man without a miracle. And if God said Lot's wife was turned into a pillar of salt, I'm sorry, but I'm feeling very comfortable just believing him for what he said. Is it a miracle? Is it hard to describe or even get your mind around? Yeah, absolutely. And I'll sum it up with this and we'll get back to numbers. I don't start out believing Lot's wife turned into a pillar of salt. I end up believing Lot's wife was turned into a pillar of salt when I walk through it. Yeah, it is a miracle. But so is prophecy. And I can prove that Isaiah wrote in 700 BC. How could he have said those things about Christ? Unless God is telling, God who sees the future and the past as clearly as today. That's the only way you can explain it. And oh, by the way, Book of Daniel, and then we'll get back to Numbers. What was their reason for believing, or when Nebuchadnezzar had that dream, and he told by the way, that was a bizarre request. Hey, I'm having a dream. I know it means something, but I wanted it interpreted. Tell me the dream, and I'll tell you the interpretation. What do the Magi say? No. You tell us the dream. We'll tell you what it means. Nebuchadnezzar said, no, it doesn't work that way. If you don't tell me the dream and the interpretation, I'll know you're a fraud and you're dead. By the way, that tells me something about the claims they were making. Either Nebuchadnezzar is the most unreasonable man that ever walked the face of the earth, or the Magi were making some claims they could really do things, and they couldn't. And now they're being called on the carpet. But when Nebuchadnezzar insisted, what was their answer? Their answer was basically, no one can do that unless the gods be with them. Absolutely. Here comes Daniel. Miracles are necessary. The story, evolution, we laugh at it because we don't believe in it, and it is a silly story when you examine it. And by the way, I wish we talked a little more frankly about it. We don't believe in evolution. Sorry, I don't believe in it. I'm not making any apologies for it. I've looked at it well enough, and I'm not an expert in it, but it just don't make sense. Book of Genesis is hard to get your mind around. God took the dust of the earth, created Adam, took a rib from his side, created Eve. Yeah, it's hard to get your mind around. But it's written in a book with miracles I can verify. I accept the ones I can't verify. And by the way, everybody knows where babies come from, right? Reproduction. Well, how'd they get produced? It had to be something extraordinary, no matter what way you go. So anyways, Book of Numbers. Balaam, greedy. But the Midianites did not teach their people. Now I remember how I got there. Teach your children. Christian evidences. But anyways, chapter 25. We don't learn it in this chapter, but Balaam will be the one that put Israel up to this. Israel goes into great sin with the Midianite prostitutes in the name of religion. But Phinehas comes to stop it. Look at chapter 25, verse 6. Indeed, one of the children of Israel came and presented to his brethren a Midianite woman in the sight of Moses and in the sight of all the congregation of the children of Israel who were weeping at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. If you don't get the picture there, I think what's happening is he's describing high sin. Sinning with a high hand. Hi, Moses. Getting ready to sin. I just introduced the boys in Jeremiah to one of my favorite passages last week. You got a harlot's forehead. You refuse to be ashamed. Some people, you confront them in their sin, and they are hostile. And I think we've got a picture of that right there. Well, verse 7. Now when Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest saw it, rose from among his brethren, or congregation, took a javelin in his hand, and he went after the man of Israel into the tent, thrust both of them through the man of Israel and the woman through her body. So the plague was stopped among the children of Israel. And by the way, the thought just occurred to me last night when I was meditating on this. And those who died in the plague were 24,000. How many tribes are there? 12. 12 times 2. 12, of course, becomes a symbolic number, becomes symbolic in the book of Revelation as well. I don't know that means anything, but just notice that, hey, what do you know? 12 tribes, 24,000 died. But verse 11's a verse I wish you would hang on to. Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, has turned back my wrath from the children of Israel, because he was zealous with my zeal among them, so that I did not consume the children of Israel in my zeal. Therefore say, behold, I give to him my covenant of peace, and it shall be to him and his descendants after him a covenant of an everlasting priesthood, because he was zealous for God and made atonement for the children of Israel. So the priesthood will go through his line. And I forget where, I'll have to look it up again for this class, not that important, but it does, I believe, get out of his line for a while, and then it comes back into it, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, the key point I want us to learn from this is, how did Phinehas respond to this gross immorality? He put an end to it with a javelin and a spear. He didn't ask God, but he put an end to it. God approved of it. Now, does that mean let's go blow up an abortion clinic? Of course not. But what I think we do learn from this, is there a place for righteous indignation? Get angry at sin? Now, there's so much sin in this world, sometimes as Christians we become immune to it. And sometimes we need to be able to call great sin for what it is. And we're not always willing to do it, if you know what I mean. There's a great passage in Jude. You don't have to turn there, but if you want, I love what Jude says here. Towards the end, Jude says this, verse 20. But you, beloved, building yourselves up on your most holy faith, praying in the Holy Spirit, keep yourselves in the love of God, looking for the mercy of our Lord Jesus Christ unto eternal life. And on some have compassion, making a distinction, but others save with fear, pulling them out of the fire, hating even the garment defiled by the flesh. What's Jude recognizing here? There are some people, I like to describe them as the spirit's willing, but the flesh is weak. You could describe their Christian journey as 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. If you charted it on a graph, unfortunately, all of us, if you chart it on a graph, it's supposed to be a straight line right into heaven. It doesn't work that way for a lot of us. It's like, oops, oops, oops. Well, why is that? Well, for a lot of people, it's because the spirit is willing, but the flesh gets so distracted by the cares and the affairs of this world. And when you're dealing with somebody like that, which, oh, by the way, why it takes a spiritual man, Galatians chapter 6, or a woman, but takes a spiritual person to talk to somebody who's been overcome in a sin. So you got to know who you're dealing with. Some people, the spirit is willing and the flesh is weak. Is that all people, though? No, some people ought to be ashamed of themselves. And the person that's confronting them, I'll look them in the eye and tell them you ought to be ashamed of yourself. I can't believe you think you can do that. And everything's going to be fine. What is wrong with you? I had a guy one time. It was a denominational church, but he was on the committee that wrote get well cards to people who hadn't been to service. And he was sitting right next to me doing it. And he does this to me. He says, man, I don't know what to do here. And of course, it's his church. I don't know what he's even talking about. So, what are you talking about? So I'm supposed to write a get well card to this girl, but she lives with this guy, and that guy's having an affair with this girl in the church. I don't even want to feel like writing a get well card to her. She needs to repent. That's what she needs to do. And we've lost the ability sometimes to just say, you can't do that. Think you're okay. You got to repent of your sins. There are some things that, no, sorry, no. And not necessarily in the church always too, but in the world. We've lost the ability sometimes to just be blunt about what you're looking at in its sinfulness. And sometimes I think that's appropriate. Now, it takes a wise man to do it, and I'm not claiming I have the wisdom. The only thing I'm trying to point out is I think that's all situations are different in that sense. Who are we dealing with? What sin are we dealing with? What is their level of will? Are they even trying to repent? You know, how do you deal with some people? And I think that there's great distinctions that we have to make when we do that. But here we got Eliezer. What's he seeing in front of him? He's seeing the grossest kind of immorality you can imagine in the name of religion. We do not endorse what he did in New Testament times, obviously. And again, the abortion clinic to me kind of is the first example that comes up to me for the reason that some people like to take the law into their own hands when it comes to that subject. I actually read one of my favorite passages from Ecclesiastes. Let me pull it out here real quick, chapter 7. All my notes I got to write them again because they're all getting worn over time. And I know I wrote it in. Let me just find the passage. Oh, there it is. Hard for me to see. Ecclesiastes 7, verse 16. Do not be overly righteous, nor be overly wise. Why should you destroy yourself? Do not be overly wicked, nor be foolish. Why should you die before your time? How can you be overly righteous? Yeah, I got Paul Hill written in the margin of that Bible right there. Anybody remember that name? Blew up an abortion clinic. I read his defense from jail. It's fairly persuasive. Now, I don't think he's right, but it's fairly persuasive. What if they're taking your grandparents out to be shot? Could you do something about it then? They're killing babies. Stop them. Of course, our problem is it's legal. How do you stop abortion? One heart at a time. You appeal to one pregnant woman who's thinking about doing it. You appeal to her. That's how you stop it. Otherwise, it's legal. I'm going to vote against it whenever I can or whenever it's an issue. You know what side of the issue I'm going to be on as an American voter. But when it comes to as a Christian, you got to change hearts. You got to convince people that that is just not an option that's on the table. You don't have to raise the child if you want, and you have to live with the consequences. But I can sympathize with a rape victim. I want to raise this child, but abortion. Here's my argument for that. As long as I brought it up, person A violates person B, who becomes pregnant. What's your solution? Kill person C. Now, how's that justice? Beg person B to have the baby. Give it up for adoption if you don't want to raise it, but don't kill it. That is a human being. Yeah. a human being. And it isn't the one that did anything to you. You may not have a serial killer. I'll just point one out. Who's a good example? It doesn't matter, but John Wayne Gacy. I know he's married. I think he was divorced at the time, but he's got a wife. If you met her, do you think she should be killed? No, it was John Wayne Gacy that was doing it all. She didn't know about it. She's innocent. Might not like you very much, might be hard to like you, but you don't deserve to die. Neither does the baby. Why? Because it's a human and it's innocent. Proverbs 31:8. Open your mouth for the speechless in the cause of those who are appointed to die. Who's more speechless than an unborn infant? And I hate the arguments, my body. You realize the arguments, my body is wrong twice? What do I mean by that? No, it's not your body. It's a body within your body. And as a Christian, your body's not your own. So you're wrong twice. It's not your body. You're mad at biology. But that's a baby. And that's why it's difficult for Christians to go into politics, by the way. As a politician, you know what I'd be tempted to do on the issue of abortion? I'd be tempted to say, all right, I'll grant abortions under incest, danger of the mother dying, or rape. You want to have an abortion under those circumstances? I'm okay with it. Now remember, I'm imagining things here. I'm just talking about being a politician. You know what haunts me about that? If I could get my way on that, do you know how many abortions I would have done away with? You realize the overwhelming 85% probably of abortions are methods of birth control. So if I could get that, I would have done away with 85% of all abortions. And I'm just throwing a number out there, but the number's high, real high. In other words, most people aren't getting pregnant because they got raped. Most people aren't getting pregnant because their brother impregnated them. The danger of the mother dying is a little more prominent, but still, the overwhelming majority of the case is that people get abortions for convenience, birth control, if you will. So as a politician, if I could get that accomplished, I would have done away with a lot of abortions. And isn't that a good thing? But the problem I have with that is I'm a Christian. And even in the case of rape, I can't sign up for you killing an innocent third party. I can't do that. Sorry. There are some, that's why it's difficult to get into politics in a serious way, because politics, a lot is compromise. And as Christians, there are some lines we draw in the sand. Abortion is the killing of innocent life. Doesn't really matter to me. I mean, it does. I shouldn't say it that way, but the circumstances with which you became pregnant do not justify killing the baby. Let's just leave it there. I'm not even sure how we got off there, but Phineas is... yeah.
Transgenderism, marriage outside of a man, all that stuff. Politician.
Yeah. Anybody know who H. Leo Bowles is? Took over for David Lipscomb after he died at the Bible College. He wrote a book, wrote a great book on the Holy Spirit. But I read his sketches in preachers, pioneer preachers. And when he got to James Garfield, you know, I'm going from memory here, but you know, he basically said, we got to include him on the list because he was that important in his day. But as you could see, H. Leo Bowles acted like, man, what could have been if he had been a preacher in the Lord's church instead of going into politics. And you could tell by the time, I'd have to go reread it again to express it accurately, but he took the position that as a Christian, you should not go into politics. You know, that's obviously an issue that's needs to be talked about, maybe not tonight, but that is how deep you get into politics, we've got to be careful. I personally, and I'll just say, I'm not ashamed of it, and I'm not saying everybody has to be that way. I'm a registered independent. I like being that way. The reason I like being that way is because I don't feel the tug of one side. I don't feel the temptation. Oh, that's my boy. I gotta run to his rescue. No, I have political opinions. I have my own ideas, and I think some of my ideas are common sense. But I see sin on the left. That's sin. It needs to be repented of. You ought to be ashamed of yourself for putting up with it, Democrats. See sin on the right. That's sin. You ought to be ashamed of yourself for putting up with it. You know why we get so many miserable politicians? Because we don't remove them when we know they need to be. Man, how much evidence we got to have? You've sold your soul when you got to Washington. You got to go home now, or maybe to jail. But anyways, righteous indignation. There is a place for it in this world. It takes a wiser man than me. You might want to talk to Dave about it as far as when is a good time for righteous indignation. But the only thing I know for sure is that there is a time and a place for righteous indignation. One thing, and then I'll call on you, Carl. John, the apostle of love. What else was he known as? Hey, son of thunder. Hey, Lord, didn't we call down lightning on this town? Problem solved. Evil people. What was you going to say, Carl?
I was just trying to write one lesson here. The Paul Bible lesson, Israelites, was, we look at Ruth, they were Moabites. They should, those women, part of those women that they married. How was that? How they?
First of all, Ruth. I hadn't thought about the book of Ruth in a while, so I'm trying to put my timeline together. This is 1400 BC. Ruth, somewhere in the 400 period, and in my off the top of my memory, what I'm trying to establish is time has elapsed when we get to the story of Ruth, and I'd have to go back and double check to see just how much time has elapsed. But Moabite's still a sinful nation, and Ruth obviously is an exception to the rule. You know, one of the great lessons to me from the book of Ruth is you don't have to be like your environment. Ruth saw righteousness in Naomi and their family, and she wanted whatever they had. And by the way, that really appeals to me because I wasn't converted in an intellectual way. I was converted emotionally. And what I mean by that is the man that converted me, I just wanted to be like him. I did. You know what I did for my first 2.5 years of Christianity? I stood in the shadow. Just quietly, didn't say anything. Hey, Mike, you here again? Yeah. Now I'm exaggerating for dramatic effect. But the point is, I followed him around town. I knew where he was going to be on Thursday night. I was there. I sit right next to him. Whatever he's got, I want it. That's what I knew. First time I heard him talk, I saw a glow around him. And I mean that sincerely. And I don't mean it in a mystical, magical, miracle sense. I just mean this guy looks different. He looks different than anyone else in this room. Whatever he's got, I want it. Wisdom causes a man's countenance to change, says Solomon. I could see the wisdom of God in this. You know what I said to myself? Guy's from Brooklyn. He had a Brooklyn accent. He's a former jail guard. But he had the grace of God just oozing out of him. And I said, man, I didn't know God was from Brooklyn. And then after I got to know him one day, I said that to him. You know, that's what I thought the first time I heard you talking. And he said, well, of course God's from Brooklyn. Turn your will and your life over to the care of God, and he's from wherever you are. He's from Brooklyn. He's from Flint. That's where I'm from. He's from Warner Robins. Wherever you are, that's where he's from. But I could see it. I could see, and my point being, I didn't get converted intellectually. Oh, okay, I get it now. No, that's not how I got converted. I got converted because this guy set the example in front of me, and I wanted the benefits of having whatever he's got. I'll do whatever it takes to have what he's got. What was you going to say, Carl?
That verse 14, the Israelite man, the man that was killed in that confrontation, it says he was a Semite, so I'm assuming he's from the tribe of Simeon. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Prominent people, too.
Okay.
Which is another problem. if the blind lead the blind, they both fall in the ditch. When prominent people are unrighteous, it encourages others. So anyways, Phineas is a hero. I think I'm going to ask on the test, verse 18, chapter 25. Who are the two sinners there? Zimri. Actually, sorry. I'm looking at, okay, I saw her name twice and I got the wrong verse. Look at verse 14. The name of the man was Zimri, and he's a Simeonite, as Carl already knows. And the name of the Midianite woman who killed him was Cosbi, daughter of Sir. I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce it, but I always pronounce it Cosby because it's easy to remember. Cosby, I've heard that before. So anyways, chapter 26, the census. We get a second census. Everybody knows why, right? Why is there, we started out in chapter 1 with a census. Why we got another one? Old generation's dead. So we got to start all over again. They take a census. I was going to ask on the test, it might even be on your notes, but I'm not going to now. I'm going to be generous to you. Here's the number I'm looking for. How many fighting men were there?
603,000.
That's the first one. You can certainly put it down on the test. I'll be asking this question. You want to put the exact number down on the test, good for you.
What was the number again? What was that?
Oh, for the first census? 603,500 of the first. Second one was
The second one is located in Numbers 26, verse 51. These are those who were numbered of the children of Israel, 601,730. So we dropped a little bit. And here's what I mean about being generous to you. I could ask for both those numbers as they are given, but I'm not sure I know why you would need to ever know those specific numbers. But what I do think you need to hang on to is, how many fighting men were there? 600,000. That's the number I'm looking for, 600,000. Now, why is that number important? Because how do we know there were 2.5 to 3 million Jews in the wilderness?
wives and children and Levites.
Yeah, we're never given the total number. The only way we can do it is with these numbers right here, and you can extrapolate. These men are married. What's the average kid? You know, how many kids are each tribe producing? So you can extrapolate and get close, 200 or 2.5 million to 3 million. So as far as I'm concerned, the useful way to use that information is just remember there were 600 men ready for war, 600,000. Both in the beginning and here in the second census, because that gives us a building block to figure out exactly how big they were. The other thing chapter 26 will do, I'm not going to worry about it for the test, or I don't think we need to worry about it, but chapter 26 gives us numbers of the tribes. And we find out that I think there were 7 tribes that actually grew while they were in the wilderness, and 5 tribes that subtracted while they were in the wilderness. If I could figure out something useful to do with that, I would, but I don't think I'll be asking you that on the test, excuse me. Chapter 27, verses 1 through 11, pick up an interesting question. What about a man who dies? He doesn't have any sons. What happens to his property? Verse 1. Then the daughters of Zelophehad, dollar for anyone who can pronounce that right. Before you try, I don't have $1. I mean, Zelophehad sounds like how you pronounce it to me. Zelophehad. What's that? You want to teach me how that one? And by the way, as long as I'm bringing it up, is it Zerubbabel or Zerubbabel?
Or is it Zerubbabel?
Zerubbabel? So did I, and I went out west and they made fun of me. What's that?
I don't know if that's right, but
Yeah, my rule is always, and here's the rule on biblical pronunciation. Say it the same way every time. Act like you know what you're doing. Pray no one confronts you. But anyway, yeah, they used to make fun of me out west because I pronounce the same way Dave does, but apparently they learned it out west, Zerubbabel. But same thing. All I try to do with some of these names is how does it phonically look to me? And phonically, it looks like Zelophehad. son of Hepher, son of Gilead. Now remember, these are the daughters of Zelophehad, not himself, but the daughters. The son of Machir, the son of Manasseh. So it's ultimately the tribe of Manasseh that's asking this question. From the families of Manasseh, the son of Joseph, and these were the names of his daughters: Mela, Noah, Hagla, Milcah, and Tirzah. What jumps out at me there is Noah. Kind of sounds like it's a Chris or a Pat kind of name. Both men and women can occupy it. Anyways, verse 2. And they stood before Moses, before Eleazar the priest, before the leaders of all the congregation by the doorway of the tabernacle of meeting. Our father died in the wilderness, but he was not in the company of those who gathered together against the Lord in company with Korah. And I like this phrase, but he died in his own sin. And he had no sons. I'll stop right there. I think she recognizes that the sin of Korah was so hideous that she's making sure Moses and Eleazar know, I wasn't a part of that. And my father wasn't a part of that either. Now, what does it mean he died in his own sin? I'm not exactly sure, but all of Israel died in the wilderness, and maybe that's what it is he didn't have the faith that he should have had, that they could take the promised land. So that's how I kind of look at the phrase, but I'm not exactly sure. But it's certainly an interesting phrase. He died in his own sin. He had no sons, and that's the key idea. Father died with no sons. He's got daughters, but no sons. Why should the name of our father be removed from among his family? Because he had no son. Therefore, give us a possession among the brothers of our father. So Moses brought their case before the Lord. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, the daughter of Zelophehad, the daughters of Zelophehad, speak what is right. You shall surely give them a possession of inheritance among their father's brothers, and cause the inheritance of their father to pass to them. And you shall speak to the children of Israel, saying, if a man dies as no son, then you shall cause his inheritance to pass to his daughter. If he has no daughter, then you shall give his inheritance to his brothers. If he has no brothers, he'll give his inheritance to his father's brother. And if he has no brothers, and if his father has no brothers, then you shall give his inheritance to a kinsman near him and his family, and he shall possess. And it shall be to the children of Israel a statute of judgment, just as the Lord commanded. So I guess obviously that situation is going to arise from time to time, and we learn that that territory, those boundary lines, God is protecting them. Keep those boundary lines and those family ties going. I imagine when the woman herself gets married, probably the oldest daughter's firstborn son will inherit the land. It will stay in the family, but the son will have a different, the son will have a different name because he comes from the mother, but not the father. So the names may change, but can you imagine for those of you that really dialed in on this, you might think of this question. Can you imagine what further complications could happen surrounding this issue with the daughters of Zelophehad? What if they married somebody? Remember, they're from the tribe of Manasseh. Well, what if they marry somebody from the tribe of Ephraim? What happens to the land then? Is it Ephraim's? Anybody know what the answer to that is? And it'll answer it later on. I'm giving you the punchline already. The woman is commanded to marry within her tribe so that doesn't happen. You can't marry outside your tribe. You have to marry inside your tribe. So that's how that will be.
That's sort of reason she had to marry their kids.
Yeah.
Boaz was that their kids.
Somebody didn't want the job, didn't it? Like I said, I haven't read that book in a while. Yeah.
Got a Boaz. He didn't want it. He accepted it. But Boaz accepted it.
Yeah, exactly.
I was going to mention that.
This passage made me cry last night. My father had two brothers actually. He had a family of 5, 2 brothers and 2 sisters. They all lived in Flint, Michigan, except one aunt, but they all had kids, and his oldest brother had 7 kids. Growing up, my first hero was my cousin. He was a year older than me, Mark. We rolled together through childhood. But anyways, my dad had 3 brothers. I'm his only son. My cousin is his only son alive to produce children. And then the 3rd brother had a son, but he died several years ago. Me and my cousin, we've never had a kid. Who's going to get our land? Ouch. The name's going to die. That hurts. But anyways, yeah, kind of made me cry. Verse 12. Time for Moses to be set aside. Now the Lord said to Moses, go up to the mountain, to Mount Abiram, and see the land which I have given to the children of Israel. When you've seen it, you also shall be gathered to you people, as Aaron your brother was gathered. In the wilderness of Zin, during the strife of the congregation, you rebelled against me to hallow me. Excuse me, I had turned the page here. To hallow me at the waters before their eyes. These are the waters of Meribah and Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin. Then Moses spoke to the Lord, saying, Let the Lord, the God of the spirits of all flesh, set a man over the congregation. You know what I like about that verse? Verse 16, I got highlighted. Who's choosing the successor? Yeah, it's not Moses. Who may go out before them and go in before them, who may lead them out, bring them in, that the congregation of the Lord may not be like sheep which have no shepherd. And the Lord said to Moses, Take Joshua the son of Nun with you, a man in whom is the Spirit, and lay your hand on him, set him before Eleazar the priest, and before all the congregation, and inaugurate him in their sight. And I've got highlighted before Eleazar. Why is he before Eleazar?
That's Eleazar's the high priest.
Yep. But here's what I want you to notice. There's a significant change here. Who's the first high priest? Who's his brother? Who's superior?
Again?
Who is superior?
Who's older?
Who's superior?
Superior? Moses.
Yeah. And I don't mean that he's a superior human. I mean he's higher in rank. Aaron's listening to Moses. When Joshua takes over, he's in charge of civil, governmental type issues. Now Eleazar's in charge. He bows to him, so to speak. So there's a significant change there. That's how great Moses is. Even a high priest turns to Moses. But once the law has been written, and now it's been written, of course, Moses, we haven't got the Deuteronomy yet, but once the law is written, even Joshua bowed before the high priest. So anyways, verse 20, and you shall give some of your authority to him, that all the congregation of the children of Israel may be obedient. He shall stand before Eleazar the priest, who shall inquire before the Lord for him by the judgment of the Urim. At his word they shall go out, at his word they shall come in, both he and the children of Israel with him, all the congregation. So Moses did as the Lord commanded him. He took Joshua and set him before Eleazar the priest, before all the congregation, and laid his hands on him and inaugurated him just as the Lord commanded by the hand of Moses. And of course, you can read all day and night about what is the Urim and Thummim. Means lights and perfections. In some way, Israel used it. Seems like there's a couple stones in the breastplate, but very mysterious how it actually determined the will of the Lord. But it did at times determine the will of the Lord for Israel. Yes. So, thought you were going to say something. All right, it's 7:10. We're done with chapter 27. Might as well take a break here. Thank you for tuning in again. Let's come on back at 7:30. Welcome back. Hey, I was just telling Dave in the break, it may not play into anything, but it could. But I would covet your prayers. I'm having issues with my calves, and my general doctor gave me an ultrasound and sent me to a vascular surgeon who I see on Monday. Anyways, when she sent me over there, she marked it urgent, which I think was just her way of getting their attention. But I may have to have some surgery. I don't know what the downtime is going to be, that kind of thing. It may, as Dave pointed out, I may be able to schedule after the semester ends and it's not be an issue, but I still would covet your prayers because it looks like I'm going to have surgery. I'd be surprised if he said anything other, but pray that he says something other than that. I'd get along just fine with medication, get a better diet, because that's part of the problem is diet. But mostly genes. My dad had the same problem. But anyways, it is affecting quality of life, but certainly other people have bigger issues. But taking a walk is a precious commodity. One thing I will say about my youth, when I was a youthful Christian, if you will, I always parked in the North 40. I liked walking into the mall or the business or whatever we're going to, because I knew someday I'm going to get to the point where I can't. I was at the outdoor mall yesterday. I was running errands. Guess what I was doing? It was Walmart. That's where I was. Guess what I was doing?
Where's the spot?
Looking for the free or the good spot. Like, man, that's what old men do. Parking in North 40. I can't do it anymore. Getting to be the old man. All right, chapter 28. I'm not going to worry too much about 28. Now, you got to remember one of the things about, the law of Moses is because there are two generations, you get information repeated a few times because sometimes it's said to the first generation. Then we turn around and say it to the second generation, and they may add some details that weren't said the first time. So if you're an Israelite and you're trying to practice your religion, then you need to read piece by piece everything that God has said, because there may be a little piece in Numbers 28 that wasn't in the law of Moses earlier and adds to it. But for our sakes, I don't think that's all that important, because what's covered in chapter 28, verses 1 through 8, tell us all about the daily offerings that the priests would make. They would make a special offering in verse 9, and on the Sabbath day, 2 lambs in their first year without blemish. And that's what I mean. We've already gone over, what does it mean, first year without blemish? I'm not going to bore you with those details again. But just notice, I'm not even going to ask you on a test, but notice that they had a weekly sacrifice in addition to the daily offering. Verse 11, at the beginning of your months, they had a sacrifice to recognize the new month. Verse 14, on the 14th day of the first month is the Passover of the Lord. And on the 15th day, verse 17 of the month, is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. It shall be eaten for 7 days. And then again, he goes into describing the sacrifices. I'm not going to ask you on a test, so we won't read those. We'll press on. Verse 26, on the day of first fruits. When you bring your new grain offerings to the Lord at the Feast of Weeks, you shall have a holy convocation. Chapter 29, and in the 7th month, on the first day of the month, you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no customary work, for it is the day of blowing the trumpets. When's the Jewish New Year? Pretty hard to keep track of them. One of the reasons is because they had a religious calendar and they had a civil calendar. Essentially had 2 first months, if you will, even though it's not called that. But when Israel came out of Egypt, first day of the 14th month is where the Passover is. God started marking time by that event. If you go back and you read Exodus 12, this is your first day, 15th day, on the 10th day of the first month. which is called Abib, and sometimes Nisan as well. This is the 7th month. What makes it special? It's the first month of the civil calendar year. So they made a big deal about the 7th month as well. So on the 15th day of the 7th month, verse 12 of chapter 29, that too is a holy convocation. And again, all the details of what you are to offer for that. Chapter 30. What happens if you make a foolish vow? Your dad can get you out of it. Chapter 30, verse 1. Then Moses spoke to the heads of Israel, the heads of the tribes concerning the children of Israel, saying, this is the thing which the Lord has commanded. If a man vows a vow to the Lord or swears an oath to bind himself by some agreement, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceeds out of his mouth. Stop right there for a minute. One of my favorite Psalms, Psalm 15. I'm pretty weak in the Psalms, to be honest with you, but I love Psalm 15. Who may abide in your tabernacle, who may abide in your holy hill. And then he gives some of the descriptions of the characteristics of godly people that can dwell in Zion. One of the things he says in verse 4 is, one who swears to his own hurt and is not changed and does not change. What does that mean? You got it there in front of you, Russ? Read verse 4. Read verse 1. I didn't quote it very well.
14 to 15.
Psalm 15, read verse 1 and then verse 4.
Lord, who may abide in your tabernacle, who may dwell in your holy hill, in verse 4. In whose eye a vile person is despised, but he honors those who fear the Lord. He who swears to his own hurt and does not change.
Great passage. My buddy was the one that turned me on to this passage because he saw it firsthand. You guys are familiar with Lads to Leaders, right? Yeah. It originated here, right?
Yes.
Well, you're supposed to tell me that. Because I did not know that. Damon's the one that informed me of it. I did not realize that. Yeah, Lads to Leaders. Back in the mid-90s, not sure if it was the mid-90s because I was at Alachua twice, mid-90s or early 2000s. The Alachua Church of Christ had pretty good Bible class team. We had a deacon and his wife, Vic and Beth. They had 2 daughters, and they brought them up in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord. These girls knew their Bible. And then there was my buddy, Gene. He was the preacher. He had a son and a daughter, and the daughter was extremely good too. But the son, I don't think he's made a mistake in his entire life. You know those people that just somehow always make the right decision and they're brilliant, they never do anything wrong? And the only thing you can say about them is you don't know how to relate to real people that fall down all the time. That's probably the greatest weakness he has, is just dealing with real people, because he never makes any mistakes. Guy's amazing. He works for NASA now. Just an amazing kid, amazing mind. Lads to Leaders. They were getting ready, practicing every week to get ready for Lads to Leaders. Well, Vic is in the reserves, and he gets transferred before Lads to Leaders goes up to Miami. And Gene's the one telling me the story. So that's half of their Bible Bowl team. They just lost 2 of their 4 players, Gene thinks, or people. I mean. Well, they moved down to Miami, which is 6 hours away from Alachua. Gene said, I kept waiting for them to come to me and say, hey, we got transferred to Miami. I hate to do it, but we got to go. Man, what could have been? He said he never did it. You know what Beth did? She took the kids and drove them 6 hours up to Alachua so the kids could practice once a week, and spent the night because she didn't want to drive 6 hours on the way home. And I know Beth, she was happy to do it. Wasn't like, oh man, I hate this. No, that's not bad. It's like, okay, I love that. We made a deal. By the way, I think everybody would have understood. Now you don't have to. Come on, we understand. You live in Miami now. Nope. He who swears to his own hurt and does not change. You make a vow, you should pay it. No matter, and circumstances along the way may make it more difficult, may make it more challenging. But he who swears to his own hurt and does not change. What a great passage. Verse 3, if a woman vows a vow to the Lord, binds herself by some agreement while in her father's house in her youth, her father hears the vow and the agreement by which she has bound herself, and her father holds his peace, then all the vow shall stand, and every agreement with her, which she has bound herself, shall stand. But if I got this highlighted, but if her father overrules her on the day that he hears, then none of her vows or her agreements by which she has bound herself shall stand, and the Lord will forgive her, because her father overruled. But if she indeed takes a husband while bound by her vows, or a rash utterance from her lips by which she bound herself, and her husband hears it, makes no response to her on the day that he hears it, then her vow shall stand, and her agreement by which she bound herself shall stand. But if her husband overrules her on the day that he hears it, he shall make void her vow which she vowed, and what she uttered with her lips, by which she bound herself, and the Lord will forgive her. But any vow of a widow or a divorced woman by which she has bound herself shall stand against her. You better think long and hard before you make a vow if you don't have a husband or a father to bounce it off of. And why are we covering this? Or why did Moses cover this? Because people get themselves in situations all the time. And Lord, get me out of this jam, I promise. Well, younger people sometimes do foolish things, and a father or a husband may be able to overrule them. But anyways, Moses covers that. I was going to say something. There's something else that I wanted to notice in this. Oh, this is what I wanted to notice. What does it mean if her husband or her father hears the vow, but he remains silent?
He hears about it, he knows the vow, and doesn't say, no, you can't keep it. Basically, he's acknowledging the fact that that vow is a valid vow.
Silence means something, right? Well, if you got two elders and one of them resigns, how many elders you got? Yeah, that's what I thought too. If you got two elders and one of them resigns, can those two men still act like they have power to fire the preacher without talking to anyone?
Nope.
They can't act.
Well, I know a situation where that very thing happened. One elder resigned, but you'd never know it. Or you'd never know there's no eldership by the behavior of the other man. He fired the preacher. The other elder was sitting in the room. When the preacher explained to the congregation, hey, these guys don't have authority, but they want a new preacher. What do you think, congregation? Are you okay with the fact that nobody talked to you about it? And the congregation was incensed, and they weren't mad at the preacher, they were mad at the former elder who did it. But the other elder that was in the room, former elder that was in the room, that heard the whole thing go down, didn't say a word. When they challenged him, what are you doing firing preacher without any authority? You know what he said? I never said anything. You sat in a room while somebody's usurping authority they don't have to make a pretty big decision. Are you going to sit in that room, watch that go down, and not say anything, and then try to claim that you aren't part of this? I see this passage right here. Your silence. And by the way, if you don't agree with it, why'd you drive down to the building? You just showed up to the preacher's. They just happened to be in the preacher's office when it all went down? No, you drove down to the building knowing what was about to happen. Your silence does not.
No, they discussed it.
Exactly. And the point being that it's almost embarrassing that somebody that was an elder would behave themselves that way and think that that would go over with anyone. But unfortunately, sometimes it happens. But yeah, if you're silent, then that means you are complicit or in agreement with everything that just happened. All right, chapter 31, interesting chapter. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Take vengeance for the children of Israel on the Midianites. Afterward you shall be gathered to your people." Now remember, the Midianites are chapter 25 there. They're the ones that seduced Israel and caused a plague that killed 24,000 people. Zimri and Cosby are two names from that event I would like you to remember. Zimri is the Israelite, and Cosby is the Midianite prostitutus, or whatever the titles were. But anyways, because they did that, they incurred the wrath of God. And here God's going to do something about it. Verse 3. So Moses spoke to the people, saying, "Arm yourselves for the war, and let them go against the Midianites to take vengeance on the Lord on Midian. 1,000 from each tribe, all of the tribes of Israel, you shall send to the war." So there were recruited from the divisions of Israel 1,000 from each tribe, 12,000 armed for war. Look at verse 6. Then Moses sent them to the war, 1,000 from each tribe. He sent them to war with Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the priest, with the holy articles and the signal trumpets in his hand. I like that. Who's Phinehas now?
Son of Eleazar.
Son of Eleazar, going to be the future high priest. There he is in battle. Phinehas. I don't think Eleazar's dead yet, but
He knows how to throw a spear.
what's that?
He knows how to throw a spear.
He knows how to throw a spear, all right. And that's my point is, this is your future high priest here. And yet he's armed for war. He's full of righteous indignation. And once again, there's a place for righteous indignation. Need a little wisdom for it, but there's a place for it. So 12,000 men go to war. Verse 7. And they warred against the Midianites, just as the Lord commanded Moses, and they killed all the males. They killed the kings of Midian with the rest of those who were killed, namely Evi, I'm not sure, Evi, Rechem, Zur, Hur, Reba, 5 kings of Midian, Balaam, son of Beor. They also killed with the sword. Balaam actually it said he went home, but apparently he's back. And somehow he got connected with the Midianites, probably when he was there with Moab. Remember, if you remember last week when we were introducing Balaam, he had a reputation. People knew about him. And so apparently he stayed or was back on the scene with the Midianites. And of course, there he dies in battle. Does the New Testament have anything good to say about Balaam? I use Balaam as an example of greed and prophesying for money. But anyways, he dies in the battle right there. Verse 9, and the children of Israel took all the women of Midian captive with their little ones, took as spoil all their cattle, all the flocks and all their goods. They also burned with fire all the cities where they dwelt, all their forts. And they took the spoil and all the booty, both of man and beast. Brought the captives of the booty and the spoil to Moses, to Eleazar the priest. There's the answer to your question, Russ. Eleazar is still the priest. Eleazar the priest, and to the congregation and the children of Israel, and to the camp in the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho. So Moses, Eleazar the priest, and all the leaders of the congregation went to meet them outside the camp. Moses was angry with the officers of the armies and the captains over thousands and captains over hundreds who had come from the battle. And Moses said to them, "Have you kept all the women alive? Look, these women caused the children of Israel through the counsel of Balaam." Let me read that again. I forgot what was in verse 16 before I started reading. Look, these women caused the children of Israel through what? Now you know why Balaam is so wicked. He's an interesting character. He would only say what God allowed him to say. And of course, God would not allow him to curse Israel, so he wouldn't. But his heart was not right. And obviously, filthy lucre and greed and avarice and The love of this present world were too much for him. Unfortunately, there are some people that the allure is too much. And then somehow they become bitter. Some people become bitter at the end of it all. Feel like they served the Lord and feel like got enough out of it. But anyways, I'm not saying that Balaam was serving the Lord, but point being, somehow he became embittered, and probably for the reasons I just said, but he's counseling the Midianites. So here's a guy that's just blessed Israel 4 times, and then what's he do? Turns around and says to Midian, I know how you can get them anyways. God won't let me curse them, but here's what you do. So it was his counsel that hatched the plan. It caused 24,000 to die. So anyways, verse 16. Why is that so important? Well, explains what happened, or why Balaam was killed, or judged by the Lord, I should say. Verse 16 again. Look, these women caused the children of Israel through the counsel of Balaam to trespass against the Lord in the incident of Peor, and there was a plague among the congregation of the Lord. Now therefore kill every male among the little ones, every woman who has ever known a man intimately. But keep alive for yourselves all the young girls who have not known a man intimately. And as for you, remain outside the camp 7 days. Whoever has killed any person, whoever has touched any slain purify yourselves and your captives on the 3rd day and on the 7th day. Now you might remember, that if you come in contact with an unclean body, and obviously that's what soldiers do, you're unclean for 7 days, and you have to have the water of the red heifer that we read about in chapter 19. You have to be purified on the 3rd day and then again on the 7th. Yes, sir, Carl.
I guess I just never paid this attention there. We were with verse 17. I know they killed the male too. They would be rattled to them against them later on that they were still alive. Kill every woman who's known a man. I can understand how they would have found that out. I understand that. But verse 18, all the women, children, all the girls that they're not only alive with them, keep alive for yourself. Were they to keep them as slaves? Or what are we talking about here?
Either one, I think. Servants, or possibly. Definitely servants. I'm not going to go any further than that until I dwell on it for a minute.
Unlikely for intermarriage.
That's what I'm trying. Well, they were able to marry some. They weren't able to marry any of the Canaanites.
But these were girls who were just grow up one day to be pregnant.
Let me look into that and give you a more exact answer next week. What I can say with confidence is the 7 Canaanite nations Israel could not marry. And I got to put a couple of pieces together. I don't want to speak up top of my head, but gets a little complicated sometimes. But definitely a servant. Dave is probably right, but let me. Do you know? Are you confident, Dave, or are you just kind of speculate?
No, I'm logically speaking, it's not.
There's a couple of chapters that are fuzzy in my mind. Sometimes it's a blur. We go through it so fast. But they were able to marry nations at a distance. So, yeah, let me hold on to that question, Carl. Maybe I can get you a better answer.
Verse 11.
What's that?
Verse 11.
Uh-huh.
They took all the spoils and all the booty of man and beast.
Uh-huh.
That means they took the cattle, the beasts
Mm-hmm.
with them.
Yeah.
Did they take man, or was it mankind, meaning women and children?
Well, they killed the men. What's that?
Spoils of man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they killed the men. So anyways, 19 through 24 describe once again the purification process with the red heifer, the blood of the red heifer. When you come in contact with an unclean body or with a dead body, you are unclean. And of course, you got soldiers that are going to need to participate in that. Verses 25. And the Lord spoke to Moses, verse 25. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, count up the plunder that was taken, both man and beast, You and Eleazar, the priest, and the chief fathers of the congregation, and divide the plunder into 2 parts. Between those who took part in the war, went out to battle, all the congregation, and levy a tribute for the Lord on the men of war who went out to battle. 1 of every 500 becomes a heave offering in verse 29. And from the children of Israel, half you shall take 1 of every 50 drawn from the person. So soldiers get a little bit of a break there as far as giving it to the Lord. But what's the principle that's taught here with the booty? What's that? Principle that's taught right there, and I'm not going to read it all because I'm going to sum it up for you. Principle that's taught there is honor the Lord with the first fruits of your possessions. What was the second city Israel was trying to take? And they failed. Why'd they fail? Achan and his family took some of the Babylonian garments and a chunk of gold with him. His family was in on it because they ended up being stoned to death as well. But what was the problem? God told him, Jericho, the booty belongs to me. First fruits. Achan and his family violated that. They got judged for it, and the valley became famous. The Jews remembered that Achan got slaughtered in that valley. What was his sin? Honor the Lord with the first fruits. First fruits belong to him. Well, here they just come home from battle, and what's God reminding them? First fruits. He's a little more generous for the soldiers than he is for the common man, but still, the booty belongs. Don't forget the Lord. Let's put it that way. You ever get a check out of nowhere that you weren't expecting? How much? Does that mean it's irregular, so you don't have to give it to any of the Lord? Yeah, everybody knows the game I'm playing right here. Not begrudgingly, but cheerfully, we purposely give that which we prospered. What did you prosper? What do you owe the Lord? Comes off the top. Actually, I think it was Gene Stillwell was the first time I heard it, but he said he knew a lady that didn't matter as far as she was concerned. Every dollar she got, Lord gets the first dime. That's the way she looked at it. Now, obviously she's somebody that is zeroed in, locked in on tithing. You and I know that tithing, and I think even she knew that. You and I know that tithing is not biblically binding in the New Testament, but there are still a lot of people that's the number that they latch on to. And of course, you and I know that in the world, we deal with tithing issues when everybody thinks tithing is just the way all churches operate. And for some people, they're kind of surprised to find out, no, that's not the way we look at it. But again, the man that converted me, when it came to the issue of giving, here's what he said. He said in the Old Testament, they were given a tenth. But our covenant was founded on better promises. And he didn't tell you had to give more than that, but he certainly made you feel guilty if you didn't. We got better promises. This is a better covenant. Maybe we should do better.
We don't keep track of, we don't give out those cards or envelopes that people put in and then track. You gave this week, but you didn't give last week. You got to make that up. You didn't give last week. We don't do that.
Tithing was a prescribed offering. Offering in the New Testament was from the heart. Wherever the heart, the relationship between the heart and the offering is what's important.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, 8 o'clock. Let's get through this book tonight. We're actually not going to read chapter 32, but I am going to tell you the story really quick and connect it with the book of Joshua. I think there's a good Christian lesson in here for us. Chapter 22, remember they're on the east side of the Jordan. I like to use the aisle here as kind of my dividing line. And Cephas and Carl are on the east side of the Jordan. These guys are crossing over here. 2.5 tribes on this side said, hey, Moses. What's that? Yeah, exactly. 2 of the tribes, 2.5 of the tribes said, hey, Moses, we like the land right here. We want to stay right here. At first, Moses is offended because he thinks they're saying, we're not going to help you fight. And Moses is outraged by that. But when the men said, oh, no. We'll leave our women and our children here. We'll cross the Jordan with you, our fighting men, and we will take the promised land for you. But we want to live here. And Moses, when he found out, oh, okay. Moses said, okay, we can live with that, but your word, you better be true to your word. What did we just learn about vows? You guys told us you will come in and fight with us. You better come in and fight with us. Well, guess what? They actually do. But look at Joshua chapter 22. And by the way, the 2.5 tribes are Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh. I'm not sure if I asked that on a test or not. But that's the story in chapter 32. Now look at Joshua 22. Joshua 22, the land has been conquered. The tribes are in their territories. And the men of war of the 2.5 tribes that live on the other side of the Jordan are saying farewell to Joshua as they head back home. Look at chapter 22. Then Joshua called the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh and said to them, you have kept all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded. You have obeyed my voice in all that I command you. You've not left your brethren these many days up to this, but have kept the charge of the commandment of the Lord your God. And now the Lord your God has given rest to your brethren. We promised them, now therefore return, go to your tents, to the land of your possession, in which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you on the other side of the Jordan. So once again, the men of war are over here in the promised land, but the battle is over. They want to go back to their families now. Joshua said, you've lived up to all your words, go. Thank you, and we will see you. Look at just one verse. Look at verse 10. And when they came to the region of the Jordan, which is in the land of Canaan, children of Reuben, the children of Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh built an altar there by the Jordan, a great and impressive altar. So let's just say that they're over there talking to Dave. And Dave is Joshua, and Dave wishes them farewell. Thank you for living up to your word. You can go home now. So they go home, and when they get right here, just before they cross the Jordan, stop building an altar. Well, what happens? Now the children of Israel heard someone say, behold, the children of Reuben, children of Gad, the half tribe of Manasseh of Canaan, the half tribe of Manasseh built an altar on the frontier of the land of Canaan in the region of the Jordan on the side occupied by the children of Israel. And when the children of Israel heard it, the whole congregation of the children of Israel gathered together at Shiloh to go to war against them. Why do they want to go to war with? We got one altar, folks. That's at the temple or the tabernacle. Why are they building an altar? Let's kill them. Ask questions later. What did Jesus say about judging? Judge not that you be not judged. What does it mean to judge? I think there are two. Obviously, we make choices, or we judge with righteous judgment. John 7:24. We make judgments about the world we live in all the time. But when Jesus said, judge not that you be not judged, I think there's two things. Number one, never pronounce a sentence. Is something sinful? Absolutely. But God knows you better than anyone. I'll let him be the judge. Yes, I know what you're doing is sinful, but I'm not going to judge you. Let the Lord be the judge. But the other thing we do all the time, I think, and this is what's going on here, you ever look at a situation and you're not sure what you're seeing? You can tell a lot about a person by the way to describe something. Some people, if I saw Dave's car in a bar, what would you think? You know what I would think? Immediately, and I mean this sincerely. You know what I would think? Dave probably has a friend with a drinking problem. He's in there trying to help him. You know what I wouldn't think? Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Elders in there getting drunk? I wouldn't think that. Now, if something happened in the future that made me think that Dave could be vulnerable in a place like that, I might change my opinion, but now I know who Dave is. But some people will always make the worst judgments. That's their first go-to. Dave's car was in a bar, therefore Dave's drunk. Jump to conclusions. That's what Israel has done. Now the children of Israel heard someone say, verse 11, excuse me, behold, children of Reuben, children of Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh built an altar on the frontier of the land in the region of the Jordan on the side occupied by the children of Israel. And when the children of Israel heard it, the whole congregation of the children of Israel gathered together at Shiloh. That's where the tabernacle is set up originally, to go to war against them. Then the children of Israel sent Phinehas, son of Eleazar, the priest, to the children of Reuben, the children of Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, into the land of Gilead. And with him 10 rulers, one ruler each from the chief house, every tribe of Israel. Each one was the head of his father's house among the divisions of Israel. Then they came to the children of Reuben, children of Gad, the half-tribe of Manasseh, in the land of Gilead, and they spoke with them, saying, thus says the whole congregation of the Lord, what treachery is this that you have committed against the God of Israel? Turn away this day from following the Lord, that you have built yourselves an altar that you might rebel this day against the Lord. Is the iniquity of Peor not enough for us, from which we are not cleansed until this day, although there was a plague in the congregation of the Lord? And stop right there. Eleazar, son of thunder, obviously not a perfect man, because guess what he just did? Jump to conclusions. You ever heard that? I get plenty of exercise. Running down people, jumping to conclusions. I forget how the rest of it goes, but yeah, he's jumped to a conclusion. He's already judged them. Anybody ever been judged? You know, as long as I use the illustration, let's finish it. Dave's in the bar, his car's in the bar parking lot, and he's actually in the bar for the reasons I just said. He's trying to rescue somebody that's in there. But I drive by and see Dave's car, and I don't go find out what it is. I just draw the conclusion that Dave drinks. There he is. I saw his car. What does Dave think when he finds out that's what I said? It's kind of disappointing, isn't it, Dave? Man, I mean, when he was trying to do a good deed, Mike, who I thought liked me, respected me, threw me under the bus and judged me the first chance he got. Should have known better. There you go. Man, we're ready to go to war. Look at verse 10. Then children of Israel, children of Gad, the half-tribe of Manasseh answered and said to the heads of the divisions of Israel, God of God knows, the Lord God of God, he knows. And let Israel itself know. If it is in rebellion or if it is in treachery against the Lord, do not save us this day. But if we have built ourselves an altar to the Lord to turn from following the Lord, or if to offer on it burnt offerings or grain offerings, or if the peace offerings on it, let the Lord himself require an account. Look at this. But in fact, we have done it for fear. A reason saying, in time to come, your descendants may speak to our descendants, saying, what have you to do with the Lord God of Israel? For the Lord has made the Jordan a border between you and us. Your children, you children of Reuben, children of Gad, you have no part in the Lord. So your descendants would make our descendants cease fearing the Lord. Therefore we said, let us now prepare to build ourselves an altar, not for burnt offering or for sacrifice, but that it may be a witness between you and us and our generations after us, that we may perform the service of the Lord before him with our burnt offerings, with our sacrifices, and with our peace offerings, that your descendants may not say to our descendants in time to come, you have no part in the Lord. Second point, what did Solomon say in Proverbs 15:1? Soft answer turns away wrath. At a moment like that, when you've been falsely accused of something you didn't do, what's the natural reaction? Hair on the back of your neck stands up. I'm ready to fight. They gave a soft answer. They brought the temperature down. And they explained why they did it. And what was the reason they did it? The Jordan River could be taken as, the dividing line between Israel and not Israel. And that concerned Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. So they built this altar right here as a memorial. Does the Christian have a memorial? Endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace. This story about Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, to me, illustrates pretty well how sometimes we can avoid trouble. Number one, you live in a world where sometimes people will judge you. Say, give you, I don't trust you. I trust you as far as I can throw you. And there's nothing you can do about it. But guess what? If you're doing the right thing for the right reasons, things have a way of showing themselves over time. People will see, Dave's friend that he rescued from the bar come up one day and thank him right in front of me and tell him how much he meant to him. And there I am standing there listening to that, knowing that I was judging Dave all the time, and this guy's saving lives and possibly souls. Don't judge. But when you are judged, a soft answer. Sometimes bring the temperature down. You ever been in a high situation? Bible classes do that sometimes. Get off on a wrong track in a Bible class, and you got a couple of brethren in there that are running on high emotions, and then this is their sugar stick. I'm going to talk about this one. Bring the temperature down. Soft answer turns away wrath. And so civil war was avoided right there because they gave a soft answer, and because the altar that they built was to remember. You and I should remember the Lord every Sunday. So anyways, 32, that's what's going on in 32. The 2.5 tribes are asking for permission to stay on the east side of the Jordan. Joshua 22 tells the story of them going home and what happened. And for my money, makes pretty good story about, life in the church. Sometimes we get off track and we're at each other's throats. Well, guess what? It goes a long way if you don't judge people. And by the way, somebody very close to me is very judgmental in that way. And I'm constantly telling them that you do not know that that's true. Quit saying it like it's true when you don't know it's true. Now, it looks like it might be true, and we may find out it's true, but you do not know it's true. Stop acting like you do. Some people are pretty good at judging. Sometimes the worst thing we can do is be smart. I've seen that before. I know what that looks like. Yeah, it does look like that 99 times out of 100. But this is the 100th time, and you're judging. Be careful. We can get jaded sometimes and be pretty judgmental ourselves. Chapter 33, all the mighty places that Israel moved in the wilderness. What did I say? What did I say?
You said 33.
Okay, that's what I meant, chapter 33. Chapter 33 is kind of the Reader's Digest. Here's where Israel moved while they were in the wilderness. 41 names on this list. I'm not going to worry too much about by the way, before we leave 32, memory verse. And when I say memory verse to this class, what I mean by that is I will put the verse in the test. You will tell me what chapter and verse it is. And your memory verse for this test is chapter 32, verse 23. But if you do not do so, then take note, you have sinned against the Lord, and be sure your sin will find you out. Probably a good idea if you remembered what that verse is. Your sin will find you out. Not necessarily in this lifetime, but you will be confronted. Unrepentant sin, we have to deal with. I love what Paul said in 1 Timothy chapter 5. Some men's sins are clearly seen. Other men's sins follow them to the judgment. So what is Paul saying? There are some people in the church that lead double lives, and we don't really realize that. And guess what? The Lord does. Their sins may follow later, but they will eventually be found out. But chapter 33 is all the places that Israel moved to. There's 41 places on the list. Some of them we know, some of them we absolutely cannot identify. We drop down to verse 37. Then they moved from Kadesh and camped at Mount Hor on the boundary of the land of Edom. Then Aaron the priest went up to Mount Hor at the command of the Lord and died there in the 40th year after the children of Israel come out of the land of Egypt on the first day of the 5th month. Aaron was 123 years old when he died on Mount Hor. So I remember somebody wasn't sure how old he was. I asked that question. Well, that's how old he was when he died. There it is right there. So once again, they get into the movements. I'm not going to worry about that. But that's like a Reader's Digest version. So 41 places on that list. What does that mean? It means Israel broke down the tabernacle, took it to wherever God wanted them to take it, and built the tabernacle back up. Look at verse 50, chapter 31, verse 50. Now the Lord spoke to Moses in the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, say to them, when you've crossed the Jordan into the land of Canaan, then you shall drive out all the inhabitants of the land from before you. Destroy all their engraved stones, destroy all their molded images, demolish all their high places, shall dispossess the inhabitants of the land, dwell in it, for I have given you the land to possess. You shall divide it, the land by lot as the inheritance among your families. To the larger you shall give a larger inheritance, to the smaller you shall give a smaller inheritance. There everyone's inheritance shall be whatever falls to him by lot. You shall inherit according to the tribes of your fathers. But if you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, then it shall be that those whom you let remain shall be irritants in your eyes, thorns in your side. They shall harass you in the land where you dwell. Moreover, it shall be that I will do to you as I thought to do them. Did Israel completely rout them out so they never had to deal with the Canaanites? No. Have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness. Be not deceived. Evil company corrupts. How's that go? Good manners. It depends on good. Yeah, I'm not saying that right. I should. Shame on me. Should be able to do that one. Man, I'm having a brain freeze. Where's that passage at? It's Ephesians, isn't it? Oh, well, anyways, it doesn't matter. I'm getting off track. We're running out of time. Company you keep matters. Anybody ever seen somebody leave the church because they got dragged back out by somebody, the world? I had a guy who was a crack addict. Got him cleaned up. He'd been doing good for over a year. We were using him on the Lord's table. He even did a Sunday evening sermon. This guy was on track. He had a brother that was in Miami who was a crack addict. And he went down to rescue him, which I believe he sincerely meant that. His brother called him up. He was in trouble. You think you could help me, brother? And he said, why don't you get out of Miami and come to my place and we'll see what we can do. But he's telling me the story. You know what he said? He said, yeah, my brother was smoking crack in the car. And I'm like, what? I understand, you want to help him, but no, he's smoking crack in the car. Sorry. But anyways, he tells me that in passing. He wasn't even trying to make a point. He just, yeah, brother smoking crack in the car. Gets up to, living with him. Next thing you know, my friend's not going to Bible class. And you talk to him, hey, buddy, we missed you, last Wednesday night. Well, my brother's not real comfortable, and we went fishing, but we talked about spiritual things. Okay. Last time I saw that guy, he owed everybody in the church money. His wife divorced him, and he left town, crack addict. Do not be deceived. I believe in spiritual gravity. What do I mean by that? The world has much more of an influence on the church than the church does on the world. People will pull you down a whole lot easier than you will raise them up. You need to be careful of that. And I've seen it more than one time. And by the way, I said that to my buddy. One of my best friends, he's an interesting character study, but he wanted to be a rock star. And he came close. He was he was a lead singer of a really good band known in Detroit, Michigan. I don't think he was, a few towns in the Midwest, but in Detroit, Michigan, you put their name, the band's name on a sign, people come out and see him. Anybody ever heard of Mitch Albom, wrote Tuesdays with Maury? He was a national, and by the way, I was sitting into Comfort Inn last week listening to AM radio on the way home, and I got WJR from Detroit, Michigan on the radio. My buddy has sang on that radio station as the house band at Mitch Albom's radio program, which reaches like 50,000 watt station. So it was a big deal. But one day I just finally said to him, Jim, man, you're 40 years old. You hang out in bars. Everybody in bars is 20. He said, does that bother you? He said, well, I'd like to think, Mike, that I inspire those people to be better than they otherwise would be. And I said to him, I don't doubt you for a second. And I believe you probably do. But I'm worried about the effect they're having on you. And guess what? The effect they have on him is far more powerful than the inspiration that he gives them. But unfortunately, for some people, they don't know how to cut ties when they really need to. Chapter 34, another chapter we're not going to worry too much about. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, command the children of Israel and say to them, when you come into the land of Canaan, this is the land that shall fall to you as an inheritance, the land of Canaan, to its boundaries. Your southern border will be the wilderness of Zin along the border of Edom. Verse 6, he gives them the western border. Verse 7 gives them the north border. Verse 10 gives them the eastern border. The one that really gets my attention more than any, and this is all I'll say about it, and we'll move on, the western border. Yeah, the western border. Western border is the Mediterranean Sea, but Israel, I don't know if you knew this, they never had occupied the territory right there at the Mediterranean Sea, the seashore, if you will. In the south, it was always the Philistines. In the middle, it was always the Canaanites. And in the north, it was always the Phoenicians. For some reason, Israel never really, that was their land, they never really conquered it. And I'm not sure about that. But anyways, that's what chapter 34 is all about, is the division of the land, giving them an idea. Of course,
might have something to do with the fact that they're not seafaring people.
Yeah, I guess that's the answer. But yeah, I don't know either. But I do know that for some reason, I guess they weren't seafaring people, didn't care that much about the land, didn't see the sea as an opportunity. Probably that's the way it is. Chapter 34, 16 through 29 is just calling the leaders that they will choose as they divide up the land. Chapter 35, how many cities of refuge are there? 6. Should have been 9, which we'll learn about in Deuteronomy, but for some reason they didn't set up the other 3, but there's 6. We've already discussed what the cities of refuge are. In this chapter, he gives you some details about what kinds of things could happen that would cause you to kill somebody by accident. And if you flee to the city, hold the trial. If you're innocent, if you're guilty, you pay the price. And if you're innocent, you have to live in that town till the death of the high priest. But that's the cities of refuge. If you've accidentally killed somebody, the avenger of blood can get you unless you get to the city of refuge and be found innocent, I might add. In chapter 36, since it's so late, we'll just that's the chapter I was talking about where what happens if you marry somebody outside your tribe? Well, that's the answer is don't marry somebody outside your tribe. But anyways, for those of you who are taking the test, if we'd had a little bit more time, I would have went over these questions. But everything that's going to be on the test next week will be taken from this test review. I'm not sure that everything that's on this review is going to appear on the test, but nothing that's not on this sheet will appear on the test. Okay? No surprises, in other words. All right. Folks online, appreciate you tuning in. We will see you next week. We'll have a test for you on numbers, and we'll get started on Deuteronomy, the study of Deuter. Dave, would you dismiss us in prayers? Doctor?